Hey guys, and welcome to the River Tool tutorial for the procedural foliage placement tool. In this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and use our blueprint to create a simple river along the map that we created. We're going to look at how to carve the landscape with a little handy Blutility, and we're going to look at some of the other settings for the river, such as how to change the material, like color, opacity, how to make the river go faster, slower, and some little tidbits that'll be useful for you once you are actually creating your river. So without further ado, let's go back to Unreal. And if you've been following the tutorial series in order, you know that this is exactly where we left off. In the previous video, we created this landscape level that you see here. We took a quick look at the material that comes with the project and all of the settings and how to change where and how much grass spawns and how many rock spawns in the sand, etc. So if you haven't seen it, go back and check it out. But in this video, we'll take a look at how to add a river. So let's go back to the top level folder, PFT under content, go to blueprints, go to environment, and you'll see the second icon here, BP river. And we're not going to lay out the entire river. In the map, in the showcase, I actually go ahead and have a river follow all of this here. And that's going to be a lot of work. So to keep it simple, we're just going to have a section of this as a river. So let's go here to the map and let's grab the BP river and let's drop it in our level right here. Okay. And if we zoom in, you'll see that there is a spline colored blue. So click on that first spline that you see there, point, and drag. And we're going to drag even more here. And let's go ahead and place this a little bit more here. Whoops. There we go. And we can raise it a little. Let's make it a little bit taller here. So there's more area. In this case, this river is covering a lot. It's going to be pretty deep here. And there we go, right there. Okay, so the way that we want to create this river is simply by adding points, duplicating points in the spline and changing the spline location. And if you worked with splines before, this is super easy. But in case you haven't, all you have to do is click on the last spline point, press and hold Alt on your keyboard and drag. And you'll see that a new spline point is created. And as you're doing that, you can actually click on the arrows and change how the spline it behaves, right? So typically the material is going to follow the spline. So you don't want to have the river go straight. If there's a curve, you want to grab the spline point and you want to curve it around, as you can see here. So the material follows the spline, right? So you can see that there is a spline that goes straight and then kind of curves there. So you can also right click in the middle of a segment and click add spline point, and that'll allow you to have even more control, right? So you can do something like this and you can create the spline to follow the path. So we're going to select these two handles here and do this and do this. And once you get the hang of it, and then you can go ahead and continue. The more spline points you have, the better your river will look, right? The more closely that you follow, I'm gonna change it here, the contour of the crevice, the better your river will look, because again, the material is following the spline, right? So if your river goes through a rock, it won't look right, right? So take your time. I'm going to be going very quickly here, but take your time to make the spline as nice as possible. And if you click on these two handles here, you can control the river just in this plane without going up and down in the z-axis. Right, so that's another little trick. So we're just going to add new spline points, and you can see that I'm going to curve the river here. They were trying to follow the little sandy area here. You can do it like this. See that? Okay. And so on and so forth. So that's how you would create the river. And you can get kind of close here. You can see some of the properties. Go to lit, exposure, and pick fixed at log 0. And that's gonna take all of the eye adaptation stuff out so you can actually see your river better, right? So that's as far as I'm gonna go, but you get the idea. All you need to do is duplicate the points and lay out your spline. And for the demo scene, for the showcase level, I actually carefully created and made the river all throughout the map. So that's the first thing we'll do. If you click on the river, you'll see that there are some settings here, like reset river, what is the mesh, the material, and there's some segment defaults and river segments. So let's take a look at the material first. Click on the little icon here. It'll take you to where the material instance is. And let's go ahead and open the material instance. And again, you always want to keep your material instances because you can duplicate this and change it. If you want to have more than one type of river in your scene, you would then have each individual river have its own material instance, right? And that will make sure that your rivers look different. So first thing, before we look at the material, river parameters, we have a few options here. The first one is color. So you can click here, and as I'm changing the color, you can see that the river color is changing, right? So if we want something a little bit more greenish, for example, we can click OK, and now our river is kind of green, right? So you can have the option of changing the color. The normal intensity, the normal is basically, you know, these little ripple effects are basically a few normal textures that are moving around. So the density would be here on the blue channel, right? So you want to make this more dense, like a 2. You'll notice that now it looks more calm, right? So if we make this something like a 5, it looks way more calm, right? Versus something like, I don't know, 0.5. You can see that you see a lot more ripples go around in your normal, right? So you can play around with this value here, like a 0.2. Look at that, right? So you can customize the look of your river by changing this value here, 0.1. Let's make it really, really dense, right? You can see that, okay? Then you have the opacity factor. You know, if you make it a 1, you can't really see through the river, right? So maybe you want your river to be a little dirtier. But the lower the opacity factor, the more transparent your river will be. So if you want to make this 0.1, you can see that you can see the bottom a lot more. And obviously, let me just take the density out, just so you can see. Yeah, so at an opacity of 0.1, you can clearly see the bottom, and you can see the little refraction effect. At an opacity of 1, you can't see anything, right? So play around with this. I can't remember what the default was. 0.5 is the default. There you go. So it's like half refraction. Then you have the refraction factor, and this is going to determine how much distortion or refraction you get. So if you make this 1, you'll see that there's less refraction. If you make it 0, you'll get a very different effect. Even actually, I don't really like this effect here. So you probably need to have something here. I would keep it at 1 or more. There you go. Yeah. And then the roughness. This is the roughness of the material. I wouldn't really change this. 0.01. The less rough the material, the more shiny it is, and you get the reflections, right? Water tends to be, you know, very smooth, not very rough, right? But you can change that if you want. And if you deselect something here, it'll go back to its original default color, right? So we'll leave it here with a lot of intensity, just for the sake. Okay, and then you have some of the river material parameters. This is a little bit more advanced, but basically the way that this material works is it has several versions of the same normal panning around at different speeds. And this is where you would look into the UV tiling, right? Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So for example, if you wanted to change this, the tiling, instead of 4, and make sure that you have the same value. Let's make this an 8 and an 8. And you can see that it changes the top layer. And instead of a 2, let's just double everything, 4 and a 4. And you can see that you get different effects. So you can play around with these values here, or you can make them smaller, like a 1 and a 1. Or maybe you keep this at an 8 and this is at a 1, and you can see that it kind of feels like more distorted, right? So more like rapids. So you can play around with these values. I found that the defaults look really nice, but you can change the values here to affect the look of your river. And the same thing for speed. So you have, if you open this layer, you can change the speed by changing these two values here, RGB, right? So again, be gentle with how you change it, but if you change this from a 0.4 to a 1, you'll see that the river is now a lot faster, right? I wouldn't change the green. The green is the direction, so you want to keep that there. But the red channel in this case was determining the speed. So a lot slower, way slower, right? 0.4 I believe was the, there you go. And you can do the same thing for the second layer. And this is also a 0.4, and you can make this a little faster or a little slower. Okay, so those are the material settings. This is, again, it's meant to be a very simple river, right? There's a lot more advanced river tools in the marketplace. So if you have one of those, feel free to use those, right? I just felt that I wanted to include something because if you're working with landscapes, more likely than not, you'll want a river, right? There's one other cool thing about the river that I did want to show, which is the ability to carve the landscape, right? So let's go back to the blueprints folder, environment, and let's drop another river here. And in this case, we're going to take a look at some of the settings here. So basically what happens is that as you are dragging your river, right? Let's make it higher so you can see what I'm talking about. As you're dragging your river, you are basically creating segments, and you see that the segments have a little number here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you pick a spline, right? And you can change the shape of the river, obviously, right? Just by changing the splines. But you can also change the width of an individual segment, right? So basically, if you click and open the array here, river segments, you'll see that every single segment will have its own little section, and it'll have a scale, a start and an end scale, right? So if you wanted a section of the river to be smaller, say section 2, you could come here and say, well, for section 2, I actually want it to have a scale of 5, right? And you'll see that that compresses the material. So if you really wanted to do things right, not only would you follow the landscape, but in the parts that are smaller, you would change the segment scale to match. And obviously this looks really bad. So the way you would do it is you would go to the previous scale, to the previous segment, and say, well, end this segment in 5, right? So starts and then ends, and then the next segment started at 5. And that way you have a smoother transition, as you see here, right? So that's why I'm giving you the segments by number, right? And honestly, from 5 to 10 is too much, right? So you would start at a 10, maybe do an 8, then a 5, and then you gradually would increase it. But that's basically what you would do for the segments. There's also segments default, and this is 10 and 10. And this is used every time you create a new segment. The tool will grab this value here and put it into the new segment. So if you change this to 2 and 2, and you create a brand new segment by dragging another spline, and I'm gonna pull the river up. Notice that the next segment automatically pulls from the default and is at a 1. Sorry, at a 2, right? So keep in mind, you can use that workflow too. You can change the defaults before you create a new segment, and then it'll choose that. Or what happens if you change your mind and say, you know what, this river is way too wide. I actually want everything to have a scale of 2. What you can do is you can use the reset river boolean here. And if you unselect it, it'll delete the river, and you select it again, it'll create the river and recreate every single segment with the new defaults here. Okay, so be careful because you may destroy your river if you change the defaults here. So this is just a way of resetting your entire river to a new scale if you decide to change your mind. Or let's make this a scale of 4, right? Reset the river and it starts at a scale of 4. Okay, let's go and make this a 2 real quick because I want to keep it small. And let's now look at the terrain carving. So I'm going to lower this river a little bit lower than the landscape. You can see how it is here, a little bit lower than the landscape. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not keeping into consideration the landscape, the mountains. So this may look horrible, but we're going to go ahead and see what happens here. So you want to go ahead and take your river and put it a little bit lower than surface. And then you want to go into the setup landscape, click on the little eyedropper and click on your landscape. And then you'll have a few settings here. Depth offset is how deep is your river, right? So the river is going to start, the top of the river is going to start where the little plane is with the material. And this will carve the terrain with a secondary spline with this offset, right? So the offset is 500 units below the top of the river. So let's make this a little shallow. Let's make it a 200. And then you're going to use a landscape spline with a start width, an end width, and a fall off, right? So you need to play around with these values, right? So there's no hard fast rule. So for a scale of 2, I believe 500 and 500 to be the actual width of the river. And then actually, let's see here real quick. Yeah, it says 800 by 800, but it doesn't really work like that. So let's just put it at 500 and 500. And let's say that the start fall off starts at 500 and ends at 1000. So you want to start the fall off when this ends, have this at the same number, and then end the fall off at whatever you want. You don't want to have this too high because if you don't have enough resolution in your landscape, it'll kind of mess it up. So anyway, here it is. We've said that we want the depth offset to be 200, the width and the start and end width to be 500, and the fall off from 500 to 1000. And now we press modify landscape. And you can see that the river has now modified this landscape. And you can see now that if there were mountains, they were now carved, and we can go below the river and you can see that it's only 200 units deep. How cool is that? Now you'll notice that there's obviously foliage that is looking wrong, and the reason for that is simple. The material instance hasn't realized that there was a change. So what you want to do is you want to go back to the material instance, open it, and literally that's it. As soon as you open it or make any changes, it'll reevaluate where things spawn and it'll automatically take the grass out of the layer. If it doesn't happen, what I would do is literally change a parameter here, save it, and as soon as you do that, the material will automatically update. And you can see here that there's still grass, right? So the river doesn't know that the material doesn't know that there shouldn't be grass at the bottom of the river here. So what you want to do in this case is use a material layer, right? So we can go back to the painting here, choose foliage removal, and we're going to go here. And now you can paint away the foliage at the bottom of the river to get rid of that. And I'm not going to do that for the entire river because again, this is just a demo, but this is the way you would do it. You would create your river, you would carve the terrain, and then you would come in here and you could use either the foliage removal layer, and that will remove the foliage, or if you want soil, right? Maybe you want it like at the bottom of the river should have soil, then you can go ahead and do that, right? And then just modify this a little bit so you can see it better. Take out the intensity and let's do the opacity factor, I don't know, 0.2. let's make it really, there you go. So then you can see now the bottom of the river. Notice that we kind of made a mistake. We're walking inside the river here. So you can kind of see the bottom, but it didn't necessarily cover everything here. So that's why you kind of have to play around with the values. In this case, really what we wanted was to make this river lower, right? So we can lower it a little bit more here, and we can press again the modify landscape, and then you'll see that the landscape is again modified. And now we actually have an edge. There you go. And then what happens? Maybe you overshot it and the river doesn't cover the crevice. So then you can increase the scale of the river to cover more, right? So you can say, well, let's change this to a scale of 4. So there are no weird edges. You can come back here, redo the river, and guess what? Now the river covers everything. You can see that the edge is right here. And again, you would have to clear the foliage. So there you go. All right. So that is how you create a river. That's pretty much it, right? It's a very simple tool. Ideally, for better natural looking rivers, you want to import your landscape from somewhere like World Machine with already the kind of the river crevices already made. But if you're creating your own landscape and you want to have a river carve out the landscape, you can use this method. All right, so I think we covered everything. We went over how to create a simple river along the map. We showed you how to carve your landscape with the Blutility, and we'll look at the different settings in the material instance and also in the actual tool. All right, as always, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube video comments, or you can email me directly at cookiegamestudios@gmail.com if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.